Welcome to The Explainer. I am so incredibly excited you're tuning in today because we are looking at a massive fundamental paradigm shift in how information is actually discovered online. For over 2 decades, the internet has basically operated on an economy of clicks. We all fought tooth and nail for those top 10 blue links on Google. But as we sit here in 2026, the battleground has completely changed. We've rapidly transitioned from a battle for clicks to a battle for citations. Seriously, if your brand isn't being synthesized into the final answers provided by conversational AI models, you are effectively invisible to over 60% of modern searchers. So today, we're unpacking exactly what this all means, and more importantly, how you can survive this massive shift from traditional SEO to GEO, Generative Engine Optimization. Let's dive in.
Okay, real quick, here's our agenda for today. First, we'll look at the mechanics of traditional search. Second, speed and core web vitals. Third, building authority through links. Fourth, the JavaScript rendering trap. Fifth, the big shift to AI search. And finally, number 6, winning the citation economy.
All right, starting with Section 1, the mechanics of traditional search, which is basically the foundation of visibility.
So, just as a quick refresher, you probably already know that the web's ultimate tireless scout is Googlebot. Because there isn't some central magical registry of every web page in the world, Google has to constantly send out these automated web crawlers. They explore the internet, they follow links from page to page, and they fetch new or updated content to bring back to their massive database.
Really, the way Google maps out the internet boils down to a pretty straightforward 3-stage process: crawling, indexing, and serving. First up is crawling, where Google discovers a URL and fetches the code. Second is indexing. This is where Google actually analyzes the text, the images, and the video files to understand what the page is about, and then stores it in its index. And finally, serving. When a user types in a query, Google basically sifts through that giant database to return the most relevant, high-quality results.
Moving right along to Section 2, speed and core web vitals. This is all about measuring the user experience. Now, finding and indexing a page, that's really only half the battle. Google quantifies the actual, real-world experience of a user once they click on a served result through 3 main pillars, known as core web vitals. These basically standardize the experience into page loading performance, visual stability, and interactivity. They are largest contentful paint, cumulative layout shift, and first input delay. So, with largest contentful paint, or LCP, the goal is a strict 2.5-second threshold. And it doesn't just measure behind-the-scenes loading, it measures when the largest visible chunk of content, like a giant hero image or a massive block of text, actually appears on the screen for the user. Anything slower than that, well, you risk the user bouncing right back to the search results out of sheer impatience.
Next up is Cumulative Layout Shift, or CLS. And look, we have absolutely all been victims of this. You're reading an article on your phone, you go to tap a link, and at the last possible millisecond an ad loads, the whole page shifts down, and you accidentally click on something completely random. It is so incredibly frustrating, right? Google penalizes pages that jump around like that. They require site owners to maintain a visual stability score of 0.1 or less.
The final pillar here is First Input Delay, or FID. This measures input latency. Basically, when a user clicks a button or types in a text box, how quickly does the page actually respond? Google wants that response time to be practically instantaneous, aiming for under 100 milliseconds. It goes to show that interactive responsiveness is just a non-negotiable quality signal these days.
Okay, on to Section 3, Authority through Link Building, also known as getting those crucial votes of confidence.
So let's say your site is fully crawlable and it's lightning fast. Awesome. But speed alone isn't going to get you to rank. To get Google to really trust your site, you need other sites to point to you. The core methods for this are adding links manually on profiles, buying links, which, by the way, remains highly risky, and earning links naturally by just creating super valuable content. And then, of course, there's asking for links, which, let's be honest, usually means sending hundreds of desperate cold emails begging for a single mention. Yeah, it's a true exercise in pain most of us have endured.
Actually, Google's own guide tells us everything we need to know about traditional authority. They say, quote, "If other prominent websites on the subject link to the page, that's a good sign that the information is of high quality," end quote. Every single relevant link from a reputable site acts as a vote of confidence. Traditional search optimization is built entirely on these votes.
Which brings us to the twist. Section 4,
The JavaScript rendering trap. This is the massive AI blind spot.
Now, here is exactly where traditional SEO completely breaks down. For years, developers have loved using JavaScript to build these beautiful, dynamic app-like websites. And Google adapted to this by creating a two-wave crawl. In Phase 1, Googlebot grabs the raw HTML. In Phase 2, which honestly could happen days or even weeks later, Google uses its web rendering service to execute the JavaScript and see the final content. But AI crawlers? They simply do not have the time or the computing power to do this. They fetch the raw HTML only. They completely and entirely ignore client-side JavaScript.
So the reality here is pretty stark. Googlebot, yes, it will eventually render JavaScript. But GPTbot, no. Claudebot, no. PerplexityBot, definitely not. If your incredibly expensive web application relies entirely on client-side JavaScript to load its text and links, well, to an AI bot, your website is completely blank. It is functionally invisible to the reasoning engines that are currently taking over the web.
Let's talk about why that matters so much in Section 5, the shift to AI search, and the battle for the context window.
Just let that number sink in for a second. 25%. Data from early 2026 shows that traditional organic clicks have dropped by 25% across most industries. Why is this happening? It's pretty simple. Users are exhausted by traditional search. They are bypassing the standard engines because they just don't want a massive list of links anymore. They don't want to sift through 10 ad-heavy recipe blogs or really dense marketing pages just to find one simple fact. They want a synthesized, direct answer in natural language, and they want it instantly from an AI.
But wait, it's actually not all doom and gloom. Seriously, a user arriving at your site via an AI citation, so for example, clicking a source link at the bottom of a ChatGPT response, is 4.4 times more likely to convert than a standard search visitor. Why? Because the AI has done the heavy lifting for you. It has pre-sold your brand as the definitive, expert solution before the user ever even clicked the link. High-intent authority is the new gold rush.
So the new rules of engagement demand that we really understand the difference between GEO and AEO. AEO, or Answer Engine Optimization, is tailored specifically for Google's ecosystem. It's about winning those AI overview summary boxes right at the top of a traditional search results page. But GEO, Generative Engine Optimization, that is all about making your content highly quotable for conversational models like ChatGPT and Claude. Just for context, AEO gets you in the overview when someone Googles a question, but GEO gets you cited when a CEO asks Claude to write a complex market analysis of your entire industry. To dominate today, you absolutely need a strategy for both.
And that leads us to Section 6, winning the citation economy. Let's talk about survival in 2026.
Okay, here are the absolute crucial tactics you need to magnetize citations right now. First up, server-side rendering. We have to completely eliminate that blind spot we just talked about. If you rely on client-side rendering, remember the AI bots see nothing but a blank page. You must pre-render your pages and serve fully rendered HTML directly to these crawlers. Think of it like handing the bot a finished manuscript instead of a messy box of loose notes. If they don't have to do the work to assemble it, they can instantly read it. Secondly, information gain injection. This is where most content strategies totally fail today. Look, large language models are trained on petabytes of data. They already know the consensus. They actively ignore repetitive fluff. So if you're just rewriting Wikipedia or summarizing what everyone else has already said, you are not going to get cited. You have to feed them unique data, publish your own raw customer data, introduce completely original frameworks, or share proprietary research. Force the AI to cite you as the sole source of new knowledge. Third is entity hijacking via seed sites. AI models are trained to heavily weigh human consensus, which is exactly why platforms like Reddit and Quora have become these incredibly valuable training grounds. They trust these platforms because they represent authentic human dialogue and problem solving. By establishing expert discussions and organically inserting your brand into highly relevant threads on these platforms, you're essentially baking your brand into the AI's core recommendations before it ever even crawls your main website. And lastly, implementing the LLMs.txt protocol. Honestly, if you remember nothing else from today, remember this. Just like a robots.txt file has guided traditional search bots for decades on what to crawl, this new standard is a simple markdown file placed directly in your root directory. But instead of just telling bots where to go, LLMs.txt acts like a highly optimized, low-token cheat sheet, specifically designed for AI crawlers. It serves up your most critical information, your brand facts, and your core messaging completely friction-free. It ensures the AI digests exactly what you want it to, exactly how you want it to.
And I think all of this brings us to the ultimate question you really have to ask yourself today. Is your brand a recognized entity, or is it just a footnote in the digital archives? The search landscape has fundamentally, completely changed. If you're not in the AI's context window, you simply do not exist. It is time to stop chasing those blue links and start engineering your authority for the reasoning engines of tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this gives you the exact blueprint you need to thrive in the new citation economy.